If you think you still got plenty of time to buy a home in Raleigh, I want to challenge that belief. Not because I want you to rush, not because I think the market is about to explode, but because I think one of the biggest mistakes buyers make is believing they know when the market changes. Here's the truth. They usually don't. Markets rarely announce themselves. They don't send a push notification through your iPhone. They don't flash warning lights across Zillow. They don't tell you this is the weekend everything starts to change. They just change quietly. One offer accepted at a time. One seller who suddenly stops negotiating. One home that goes under contract before you even schedule the showing. And by the time everyone agrees the market has shifted, the advantage that buyers enjoyed are already behind them. Welcome to episode 253 of the Martini Mortgage Podcast. I am Kevin Martini, a certified mortgage advisor and producing branch manager, NMLS 143962, with the Martini Mortgage Group at Gold Star Mortgage Financial Corporation, NMLS 3446, Equal Housing Lender. Now, the Martini Mortgage Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not legal or tax advice. Now, let's talk like we were if you were sitting across the table from me. That brings me to a conversation my business and partner Logan and I recently had. We were working with a buyer who had done everything right. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't unprepared. She had her finances organized. She knew what she wanted, and she had narrowed her search down to 3 homes she genuinely loved. But there was one thing she wanted before making an offer: more certainty. Maybe rates would improve. Maybe prices would soften just a little bit more. Maybe another home would come along that she even loved better. None of these thoughts are unreasonable. In fact, they're exact thoughts most buyers have. So she waited. 4 weeks later, 2 of the 3 homes were gone. Not because someone paid some outrageous price, not because there was a bidding war worthy of the evening news. They were simply sold, close to asking price, to the buyers who were actually ready. Watching that happen reminded me of something I've seen over and over again during my professional career. People rarely lose opportunities because they make a terrible decision. More often, they lose opportunities because they make a reasonable decision based on information that is already outdated. That's where I think many Raleigh homebuyers are standing today. Over the past years, you've heard consistent message. Inventory is improving. Sellers are becoming more flexible. Buyers now have more negotiating power. And to be 100% clear, all of that was true. Inventory did improve. Negotiating did become easier. And for the first time in a very long time, buyers finally felt they could breathe. But here's the problem with markets. They're always moving. The story that's completely accurate in March can quietly become incomplete by July, without anyone announcing it, without headlines screaming the conditions have changed. That's why I believe one of the most dangerous phrases in real estate is this: I've probably got a little bit more time. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. The challenge is that nobody knows the exact moment the market becomes shifting. Not me, not your realtor, not the economists on TV, and certainly not the headlines that usually arrive weeks after the market has already changed. That's why I think we've been asking the wrong question. Most buyers ask, when should I buy? I think there's a better question. How can I be ready when the right opportunity presents itself? Those are completely different mindsets. One depends on predicting the future. where the other depends on preparing for the future. And preparation has always been the one thing buyers can actually control. Because here's something I learned after helping families finance homes for years. The buyer who sleeps best at night aren't the ones who perfectly timed the market. They're the ones who knew exactly where they stood before they ever fell in love with a house. They knew their payment. They understood their options. They weren't guessing. They had clarity. And clarity changes everything. Because when you have clarity, you stop chasing the market. You stop responding to it. Now, why am I saying this today? Because a number was released earlier this month that almost nobody outside of the mortgage industry is actually talking about. Now, at first glance, it does not look dramatic. It's the kind of statistic that does not make national news. But I think it may become one of the most important signals buyers see all year. Not because it says prices are about to skyrocket. It does not. What it says is something more subtle. And sometimes the subtle changes are the ones that actually matter the most. So let me explain. A company formerly known as CoreLogic, one of the most respected housing data companies in the country, their latest report showed that the national home price appreciation accelerated for the first time in nearly 2 years, moving from 0.6 annual growth in April to 0.8 in May. Now, this number is not exploding, it's not surging or accelerating. There's a big difference here. After nearly 2 years of slowing momentum, home prices nationally began moving a little faster again. The 3 months reading, the number that tends to move before the annual figure catches up, jumped 1.6%. That is the strongest push since the slowdown began. Now, on paper, that doesn't sound like much. In real life, it means everything. Because markets don't usually reverse with fireworks. They turn like a cargo ship. Slowly, quietly, and by the time that you and everyone realize the ship has changed directions, it's already miles away from where it started. I think that's where we are today, folks. Now, before you hear that and think I'm saying you need to buy right now before it's too late, let me just stop you. That's not what this message is about. Fear has never been a good financial strategy. My message is much simpler. Don't confuse a calm market with a market that is standing still. They are not the same thing. And that's especially true here in Raleigh. We're fortunate to live in one of the strongest long-term housing markets in the country. People continue to move here for jobs, education, healthcare, and the most important, quality of life. The Research Triangle Park remains an economic engine that attracts many new residents every year. Now, that doesn't mean prices only go up. They do not. Real estate has cycles. But it does mean that when momentum begins to shift nationally, markets like ours often feel it quietly before most people recognize what's happening. The study noted the gap between the hottest markets in the country and the coolest ones narrowed to a record low. Steady growth markets like Raleigh sit right in the middle of that shift, not at either extreme, which is exactly where a change like this tends to show up very quietly first. And there's another piece of the puzzle that deserves some of your attention: mortgage rates. For the last 2 years, almost every buyer I've talked to has said some version of the same sentence: I'm waiting for mortgage rates to come down. Now, I understand that it is a logical thought. And it's not baseless. Energy prices, which mortgage rates have historically tracked, have been trending down. And forecasters expect that trend to continue into the back half of 2026. But here's what I think gets overlooked. If mortgage rates fall meaningfully, you won't be the only person who notices. Millions of buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines are watching the exact same headlines that you are. They're waiting for the same signal, the same confirmation, the same feeling that now is finally the right time. So imagine what happens if rates improve by just 1%. Suddenly, buyers can afford more homes for the same monthly payment. A 1-point move in mortgage rates shifts buying power by roughly 10%. Some people who couldn't qualify before now can. Others who are waiting decide it's time. Demand doesn't trickle back into the market. It often comes back in a big tsunami. That's why waiting for the perfect rate can sometimes create more competition instead of less. Again, I'm not predicting exactly when that happens. No one can. But Fannie Mae and the National Association of Realtors are both still projecting continuing growth this year, not a decline. Somewhere in the 2 to 4% range nationally. What I'm saying is this. If your entire strategy depends on perfectly timing something that nobody can predict, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. There's a better strategy. Prepare first, then watch. That's the philosophy we build our entire business around. Strategy before structure. Most people think getting a mortgage starts after they find a house. I think that's backwards. The mortgage isn't just paperwork, it's a strategy. Because once the numbers are verified, once your income has been reviewed, once your documents have been underwritten, something changes. You stop wondering if you can buy. You start deciding whether you should buy. That's a completely different conversation. It's no longer about chasing the market. It's about evaluating opportunities with confidence. Think about two buyers who walk into the exact same house. One is hoping that everything works out. The other already knows exactly what they can afford, what that payment fits their life, and that they're fully underwritten. Which buyer do you think sleeps better at night? Which buyer writes the stronger offer? Which buyer has more confidence to negotiate? The difference isn't income. The difference is preparation. That's why we've created the same as cash mortgage approval process. Not because we think everyone should buy today, but because we believe everyone deserves to be ready when the right opportunity appears. Whether it's next week, next month, or even next year. Preparation doesn't expire. Panic does. So let me leave you with two questions. If the market quietly became more competitive over the next 60 days, would you recognize the signal? And if the perfect home came in the market tomorrow, would you be making a confident decision? Or would you be scrambling to start the mortgage process? Those are two different places to be. At the Martini Mortgage Group, we've always believed the goal isn't simply to get a mortgage. The goal is to make one of the biggest financial decisions of your life with confidence instead of guesswork. That's why strategy before structure means. Because the best time to prepare isn't when everyone else decides it's time. It's before they do. If you'd like to know what that looks like for your situation, I'd be honored to have a conversation with you. You can reach me by dialing 919-238-4934. There'll be no pressure and no sales pitch, just clarity.